My name is Beatrice Caldwell, and I'm 68 years old. What I'm about to share with you shattered everything I thought I knew about family, peeling back layers of love I'd wrapped around my heart for decades, until only raw, aching truth remained. The funeral for my husband Walter was the most silent moment I'd ever endured, the kind of quiet that presses in like a heavy fog rolling off the ocean, muffling even the distant crash of waves against the rocks below Harbor's Edge Cemetery. Standing there by his open grave, under a gray sky that mirrored my grief and chilled the air to my bones, my phone buzzed in my coat pocket with a message from an unknown number that froze the blood in my veins, turning my fingers icy as I fumbled to read it. I'm alive. That's not me in the casket. My breath caught in my throat, a sharp gasp that tasted of salt and sorrow, my fingers going numb as I typed back, heart pounding like a drum in my chest, echoing the relentless rhythm of the sea we'd both loved. Who is this? The reply came instantly, stealing my breath and making the world tilt beneath my feet. I can't explain now. They're listening. Don't trust our daughters. If my story has already gripped your heart, subscribe to the channel and stay with me for the next one. You won't want to miss what's coming. That single text split my world open like an axe through wood, splintering the fragile piece I'd clung to amid the mourner's hushed whispers and the faint scent of damp earth rising from the grave. I glanced over at Lydia and Fiona, my own daughters, hovering near the casket with faces etched in perfect sorrow, their black dresses fluttering slightly in the breeze that carried the briny tang of the harbor. But their eyes, those eyes I'd looked into since they were tiny, wide with wonder at their first sight of the ocean, held something off, a flicker too controlled, tears that didn't quite reach their depths and seemed to evaporate before they could fall. Their embraces felt stiff, like they were going through motions rehearsed in a mirror, their arms wrapping around me with a hesitation that sent a subtle chill through my wool coat, as if even touch had become a calculated performance. For 45 years, Walter had been my anchor, my joy, the man who made every ordinary day feel like a gift wrapped in the golden light of sunset over the water. We met when I was 22, in the quiet coastal town of Harbor's Edge, where the ocean waves whispered secrets to the shore, and the air always carried that fresh, salty bite that invigorated the soul. I was waitressing at the old diner on Main Street, the one with the cracked linoleum floors and the perpetual smell of frying bacon and strong coffee, scraping by to help my widowed father with his medical bills that piled up like driftwood on the beach, while Walter fixed fishing boats down at the dock, a trade passed down from his grandfather, his hands forever marked by rope burns and engine grease. We were scraping bottom financially, but rich in ways that mattered, laughs over shared sandwiches on our lunch breaks, walks along the beach at sunset, where the sand cooled under our bare feet, and the sky painted itself in hues of pink and orange. I remember the exact afternoon he first caught my eye, the memory washing over me now like a gentle tide, pulling me back even as grief tried to drown me. It was a foggy Thursday in spring, the kind where the mist clung to everything, softening the edges of the world and carrying the distant call of seagulls. I was wiping down tables in my faded blue uniform, the fabric worn thin from too many washes, hair tied back in a messy ponytail that frizzed in the humidity, when he walked in with salt-streaked hands and a grin that lit up the dim room, cutting through the fog like a lighthouse beam. "Morning, Beatrice," he said, voice warm as fresh coffee steaming from the pot behind the counter, a shy tilt to his head that made my stomach flutter unexpectedly. "Heard you make the best clam chowder in town. Mind if I test that claim?" I didn't usually banter with customers, but something in his easy manner drew me in, and I bantered back anyway, just to keep him talking, my voice lighter than it had been in months caring for Dad. That led to stolen moments by the pier, where the wooden planks creaked under our steps and the water lapped rhythmically below, promises sealed with seashell rings we'd picked from the shore, and a beachside wedding with wildflowers tucked into my hair and barefoot vows exchanged as the sun dipped into the sea. the sand warm between our toes. Our first home was a tiny cottage with creaky floors that groaned like old friends in the night, and a view of the waves that crashed endlessly, a constant soundtrack to our life. Rainy nights meant buckets catching drips from the roof, the metallic ping echoing through the rooms as we huddled under blankets, the air thick with the scent of wet wood and our shared laughter, dreaming big about the family we'd build. When Lydia came along, our eldest, I thought my soul had expanded to hold the universe, her first cry mingling with the gulls outside as I held her tiny form, inhaling that new baby's scent mixed with the ocean breeze filtering through the window. She had Walter's curious blue eyes that sparkled like the sea on a clear day, and my stubborn chin that jutted out when she was determined. 3 years later, Fiona arrived, a bundle of giggles and energy that filled the cottage with chaos and joy, her laughter bubbling up like waves on the shore. I poured everything into them, nights rocking them through fevers when the cottage felt too small and stuffy, the heat of their little bodies against mine, a fierce reminder of my purpose. Days teaching them to tie knots for the boats, our fingers tangled in rough rope as the sun warmed our backs. Evenings with Walter spinning tales of sea adventures by the flickering light of our old lantern, his voice deep and soothing. He was the fun parent, taking them crabbing at dawn when the air was crisp and the water mirrored the pink sky, showing them how to mend nets with patient hands that never tired of guiding theirs. I handled the scraped knees, bandaging them with care while the salt air stung the wounds, the school projects scattered across our worn kitchen table, the heart-to-hearts whispered in the dark when nightmares came. We were tight-knit, or so I believed, a family bound by love, stronger than any storm that battered our shores, the kind of bond that weathered gales and came out stronger. But as the girls grew, cracks appeared, subtle at first, like hairline fractures in seashells that you don't notice until they crumble in your hand. Lydia, always the driven one, chided our simple life early on, her voice sharpening one evening as we sat on the porch, the waves rumbling below. "Why don't we have a bigger boat like the other families? Why live in this shack?" The words hung in the salty air, stinging more than the wind off the water. Fiona echoed her, trailing in her sister's wake like a shadow, her smaller voice piping up in agreement, a micro-conflict that left me pausing, my hand tightening on the porch railing as I forced a smile. At 18, Lydia turned down Walter's offer to join him at the dock, her rejection sharp as a harpoon. "I don't want calluses and fish guts, Dad. I'm destined for more." Those words stung him silent. I'd find him later on the porch, gazing at the horizon with unspoken hurt, etching lines deeper into his weathered face, the crash of waves a lonely accompaniment to his quiet sigh. Still, they soared. Lydia landed a marketing job in the city, Fiona in real estate. Money flowed in, fancy clothes that rustled expensively, sleek cars that gleamed under street lights, talk of stocks and deals that sounded foreign in our humble cottage. Pride swelled in me at first, a warm glow like the sun rising over the bay, watching my girls escape the grind we'd known. But visits dwindled to obligations, calls clipped and distracted, leaving me staring at the phone with a hollow ache. When they came, they'd wrinkle noses at our salt-worn cottage, the faint scent of fish and old wood suddenly embarrassing under their scrutiny. "Mom, you and Dad should upgrade," Lydia said once, sipping wine from a crystal glass she'd brought herself, the clink of it against the table too refined for our chipped mugs. "This place is quaint but outdated. Quaint. Our home, where we danced to old records spinning on the dusty player, the floorboards creaking in rhythm, where the girls had built sand castles in the yard with buckets that still sat in the shed. It was everything, a sanctuary scented with memories." Walter sighed, his voice low over the distant roar of the tide. "Money's changed them, Bea. We're not their priority anymore." I defended them fiercely, my words tumbling out in a rush. His inner fear whispered that he might be right, a subtle vulnerability I pushed down. They're ambitious, building futures. But deep down, I felt the drift, a reflective pause in the quiet nights when the waves sounded lonelier. The shift sharpened when Lydia married Victor Langford, a slick investor who sneered at our rustic charm with a curl of his lip that made my stomach twist. Their first visit post-wedding, he arrived in polished loafers that tracked sand across our floors, the grains crunching underfoot like an intrusion, arm around Lydia in a suit worth more than our monthly haul from the dock. "Pleasure," he muttered, handshake limp and cool, his cologne overpowering the natural sea air. At dinner, my homemade lobster rolls, the buttery scent filling the room, he picked at the food, pushing pieces around with a fork, his disinterest a quiet jab that left me hesitating mid-bite. Fiona, still single, adopted the same aloof vibe, glued to her phone during family gatherings, the glow of the screen casting shadows on her face as she typed furiously. Holidays turned perfunctory. Lavish gifts we didn't want, wrapped in shiny paper that felt cold to the touch. Brief stays filled with awkward silences, hasty exits with relief evident in their straightened shoulders. Walter and I aged alone, him still mending boats till his hands ached with the familiar pull of ropes, the workshop echoing with the clang of tools, and the gull cries outside, me sewing quilts for local shops, the needle pricking my fingers in, the dim light of our living room, the fabric soft under my calluses. We leaned on each other, content in our rhythm, his arm around me on the porch as the sun dipped low, painting the waves gold. "The real tragedy," Walter confided one evening over tea on the porch, the steam rising in the cooling air, waves crashing below with a rhythmic fury that matched his quiet frustration, "isn't their success. It's that they've forgotten what matters." He was spot on, his words lingering like the aftertaste of strong brew, forcing a moment of self-awareness where I questioned my blind maternal hope. Pressure mounted when Lydia snagged a $300,000 condo in the city skyline, its modern lines a stark contrast to our weathered cottage. Fiona followed with a $250,000 beachfront apartment, the kind with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking sands we'd once played on. Suggestions turned insistent, a micro-conflict brewing in their voices. Sell the cottage, move to assisted living. Victor proposed over a tense coffee, the bitter liquid cooling untouched in my cup as his words landed heavy. Modern facilities, no upkeep. Assisted living, like we were burdens to warehouse, the idea sending a subtle fear coiling in my gut. Walter stood firm, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hand on the table. "This is our haven." But I caught the girls exchanging glances, supportive of the idea, a beat of hesitation in the air that made me wonder. Then came the documents, crisp folders that smelled of fresh ink and city offices. Lydia showed up with them one sunny afternoon, the light glinting off the waves visible through our window. "Mom, Dad, think practically. The cottage is valued at maybe $50,000 tops. Sell, add our contribution, get something manageable." Manageable. And Dad retiring, the dock's too risky at his age, her tone laced with false concern. Fiona nodded, her agreement a shadow. "An injury could bankrupt you." Caring words, but laced with urgency, eyes calculating like they were appraising more than our home, leaving me pausing mid-sentence, inner thoughts racing with doubt. Months of tension followed, the air in the cottage thick with unspoken arguments. Appraisers snuck in uninvited, their footsteps echoing on the creaky floors. Agents circled like gulls, their calls persistent. At a strained dinner, the scent of grilled fish heavy, Lydia dropped, "Victor and I want kids soon. We'll need support. Sell now and advance inheritance." Advance. While we breathed, the audacity making my fork clatter against the plate. Walter's jaw clenched, a reflective pause as he set down his knife. "When we're gone, it's yours. Not before." Fiona snapped, her voice cutting sharp. "Stop clinging to the past. You're not immortal," the words hanging like storm clouds. That night, Walter whispered worries in the dim bedroom, the waves a soothing murmur outside. "B, this feels off, darker than greed," his hand trembling slightly in mine, revealing his vulnerability. I couldn't fathom how right he was, but a subtle fear gnawed at me, self-awareness blooming in the quiet. Our last real talk with Lydia was 2 weeks before Walter's accident. She visited solo, somber, the porch light casting long shadows. "No matter what, Fiona and I will care for you." Chilling in hindsight, why no matter what? Her words soothed then, but now echoed with menace. The catastrophe struck on a blustery Monday, wind howling like a warning. Walter left at dawn for the dock, packing his thermos of coffee, the door clicking shut with finality. I was baking his favorite blueberry muffins, the sweet scent filling the kitchen, oven warmth combating the chill. When the call came from the hospital, the ring shrill against the crash of waves. "Mrs. Caldwell, your husband, severe accident. Come now." Legs buckled, I clutched the counter, the wood cool under my palms, mind reeling in a haze. Neighbor Ruth drove me, her old car rattling over coastal roads, my hands shaking too much to grip the door. Walter was safety-obsessed. How? The question looped, a micro-conflict with my trust in fate. Lydia and Fiona were already there, the sterile hospital smell overpowering the sea air on their clothes. Odd since I was the contact, but grief blurred details, a hesitant beat as I hugged them. "Mom!" Lydia hugged tight, her perfume cloying. "Dad fell from a boat lift. Head trauma, internal bleeding." Fiona's eyes red-rimmed but fidgety, fingers twisting her necklace. In the ICU, fluorescent lights harsh, machines beeping his fight. In a relentless symphony, Walter lay bandaged, tubes snaking like vines. I held his hand rough from years at the dock. "Fight, love, I'm here!" Voice cracking. A faint squeeze. Hope flickered, warm as sunlight on water, his fingers pressing back with subtle strength that spoke of his will. 3 days of vigil, the waiting room chairs hard and cold, coffee stale. Daughters hovered, probing doctors on costs, policies, their whispers a tense undercurrent. Lydia, "Dad's life insurance, $100,000, plus disability up to $80,000. Money amid agony?" "I want him alive," I snapped, rage flaring hot. Doctors delivered. Doom in a small room, air stale, coma, unlikely recovery. Lydia, "Be realistic, Mom. He wouldn't want this." Her hand on my arm feeling possessive. Burden. Rage boiled. A pause where I searched her face for the girl I'd raised. "He's your father." Alone that night. Hospital hum droning. His fingers twitched, lips moving soundlessly in the dim light. Nurses dismissed spasms, but I knew a moment of profound connection, his subtle fight piercing my despair. Friday dawn, alarms wailed like sirens over the sea. Resuscitation failed, the room chaotic with shouts and beeps. At 5:12 a.m., Walter gone. I collapsed, cradling him, his skin still warm, scent of salt, and him lingering. Daughters arrived post-mortem, armed with funeral plans, clipboards efficient. "Harbor's Edge Chapel, simple service," Fiona said, voice flat, detached like closing a deal. Funeral, overcast, sparse attendance, wind-whipping dresses. My black dress from Dad's burial, fabric heavy with memories. Few showed, dock workers absent, their absence a hollow echo. "Kept it private," Lydia explained, but Walter loved his community, the micro-conflict in her quicker version of eyes. Service hollow, pastor's words drowned by wind. Daughters checked watches, impatience flickering. Dirt on casket, final thud, earth cool and final in my palm. Then the text, I'm alive. That's not me in the casket. Heart stopped, screen blurring. Reply, who are you? I can't say. They're watching. Don't trust our daughters. Phone nearly slipped, plastic cold. Ruth reached. I yanked back, a protective instinct surging. You okay, Mom? Fiona asked, too solicitous, her touch lingering a beat too long. Fine, I mumbled, pocketing it, pulse racing. Homeward, texts haunted in the car, salt air through the window, no comfort. Prank or truce? Who in the casket? Inner thoughts swirled with fear and fragile hope. That night, reviewing in the cottage, waves crashing accusingly. No doc report? Daughters there pre-notification? Insurance obsession? The questions built tension, a reflective pause by Walter's chair, his absence a void. Checked Walter's desk drawer, locked box, key hidden under seashell. Life policy updated 8 months ago. $100,000 from $10,000, ink fresh. Disability new, $20,000 accidental, why? Hands trembled opening it, phone buzzed, bank statements. Unauthorized transfers. The alert lit the dark room. At First Harbor Bank, teller Sarah, Noni's decades. Condolences soft. Walter withdrew $2,000 April, $4,500 May. $5,000 June for dock upgrades. Her voice hesitated. Sensing my doubt, signatures shaky, unlike his steady scrawl, loops uneven. Alone? With Lydia once, helping with fine print, she recalled, brow furrowing. Lydia, excuse his fading eyesight. But Walter's glasses were perpetual, perched on his nose even in sleep. A subtle fear gripped me, self-awareness of my naivety. Another text. Policies there push. For you, trap. Words burned, evidence mounting like high tide. Daughters visited next, footsteps on porch, creaking ominously. Lydia, Mom, insurance process is fast. $180,000 total. Invest wisely. Eyes gleamed with hunger, a micro-conflict in her forced smile. Or retirement village. We manage funds, safe from scams. Manage, steal. The word echoed, inner vulnerability surfacing. Let me consider, I said, buying time, heart heavy. Post-departure text, dock clean? Check tools. The instruction clear, urgent. Visited dock, spotless, no lift damage. All equipment pristine under the sun, gulls wheeling overhead. The boat lift itself was untouched. No scratches, no hydraulic leaks, no signs of a fall. Fall impossible, the lie glaring in the untouched space. Desk note, Walter's hand, dated 4 days pre-death. Lydia pushes insurance hike. Says for B, uneasy. Fiona signed upgrade papers, don't comprehend rush. His script firm despite worry. Sealed envelope, dearest B, if reading danger. Daughters fixated on money, selling cottage. Victor pressures. Lydia warned, accidents happen at Dad's age. Threat? Love you, trust no one blindly, not daughters. Tears flowed hot, his foresight a lifeline, growth in my resolve. Lydia called. Thinking future, Mom. Sell soon. Tone pressing. At police. No accident report. The station smelling of coffee and paper. Hospital, admitted unconscious, ethylene glycol poisoning, antifreeze. Lethal, mimics trauma, the revelation hitting like a wave. Daughters hid, faked false story. Signed confidentiality, their signatures bold. Sergeant, suspect foul play? Investigate. Certainty crystallized. Daughters poisoned for payout. Fiona visited with pie. Eat, Mom, grieving, the sweet scent suspicious. Recalling warning, don't ingest offerings. Declined politely, tension in her pause. They pushed mental health concerns, village move, fund control. Voices overlapping in a rehearsed duet. Threat, legal incompetency if resist. Their eyes hard. Text revealed, PI, Walter hired me. Anti-freezing coffee. Audio proof. Meet Seaside Cafe, 2 p.m. tomorrow, corner booth. Hope surged. Met Paul Whitaker, 50s, compassionate, folder thick. Played recordings in the Seaside Cafe's murmur. Coffee aroma grounding, daughters plotting poisoning. Debts, 90,000 Lydia, 60,000 Fiona. Post Walter plans for me, suicide, inherit the full estate, cottage, insurance, and savings. Voices cold, planning over city noise. Photos, Fiona buying antifreeze. June 12, 2023, $18.99 cash. Her face clear in surveillance, financials, desperation. Numbers damning Walter's exam, healthy. No issues, report crisp, to police that night. Evidence presented under fluorescent lights. Warrants issued, the sergeant nodding gravely. Dawn arrests, sirens wailing over waves. Daughters denied, crumbled under evidence. Voices breaking, exhumation, antifreeze confirmed. Lab cold and clinical. Trial, guilty, life no parole, 35 years. Courtroom echoing with gasps. 6 months later, Lydia overdosed in her cell, a final act of despair. 2 years after that, Fiona was institutionalized. Her mind shattered. I turned dock into community garden. Earth rich underhands donated tainted funds to Anti-Elder Abuse Foundation, the act healing. Peace now. Porch sunsets with Walter's spirit in the breeze. Truth a balm. I've grown, vulnerabilities faced, strength found in justice. If this moved you, comment your city and thoughts below. Subscribe for more. Stories of strength await.